Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Labyrinth of Limitations. This is a very special episode to me because we are commemorating today the subscribers for Labyrinth of Limitations went over 1,000. We're a bit over 1,000 subscribers now, which is super exciting to me, and I'm so thrilled that folks have enjoyed these. I didn't imagine that we'd have this many subscribers so soon. Since starting this channel in March, and that's great. And I've really enjoyed chatting with all of you guys about this stuff. Keep the comments coming, and thank you for joining. Big thanks to Things I Learned from Barry Harris, Chris Parks, for getting the word out some, and to Barry Harris for teaching and sharing all this wonderful stuff with us. So I'm also announcing that I'm launching a Patreon today. And so you could join that if you want to support this channel and the work I'm doing in this way. There will be some things available just through the Patreon, some extra PDFs, and early access to software that I'm developing that I've mentioned and shared parts of before through videos, but that has to do with this subject matter and can be helpful. So anyway, let's get on to what we're talking about. I just played Manuel Ponce's a movement. I played one variation from his Variations in Fugue on Folista España. This is a big work that he wrote, and it goes through all kinds of kind of stylistic transitions that all fit within Ponce and what he sounds like. He's one of my favorite 20th century composers. Really beautiful stuff. So he's in an anachronistic, old kind of Bach-like style, and it's a canon. So that means that the lower voice is imitating the high voice. It starts out D, D flat, and C, and the lower voice does the same thing just 3 beats later. And that happens throughout this work. Rather than go into too much detail on how you do a canon, I'd like to talk about how every single note in this piece is using the scales of chords. As a gift to you guys for this special episode, there's a free PDF instead of $2. And I'll link to it, and it's just an annotated score for this piece. Has lots of notes on it, and it explains where everything comes from. It shows the diminished notes and the non-diminished notes, and has commentary and all that. So you can check it out and follow along with me. So we start out in G minor 6. So and he starts out playing G minor 6 on the strong beats, and strong beat versus weak beat becomes very important in this piece, the way he's dealing with it. So it's G minor 6, diminished note, G minor 6, little chromatic motion there like that kind of Barry's chromatic scale idea, type of chromatic motion. So diminished. Now G minor 6 on the strong beat. Now what's going to happen is as we move towards, we're in the key of D minor. As we move towards D minor, we're going to hit the 5, but we're not going to play any of the things we talk about playing over an A dominant 7th. Instead, we're going to play D minor 6, but metrically emphasizing the diminished notes so it sounds like the 5 chord. So it goes, we're on weak beat and then strong beat. And the strong beat is diminished notes in G minor 6. This was D minor 6. This is D minor 6, diminished notes. D minor 6, diminished notes. Here we have borrowing a diminished note on top of D minor 6, and then which moves down in parallel motion. Now, of course, this both sound dominant because this is the diminished and this is just A7. Which is part of the trick of that. And then I do that in the lower voice, but this time I play that B flat not against the D minor 6 note, but rather against a diminished note. So I've switched so that now my diminished note is on the weak beat, so I land like that. But he does a little suspension like that, see? So what we have there at the beginning then is we have G minor 6. So we got so what if I just played some G minor 6? And then so I go, I'm in D minor 6 now. You see what I did there? just doing sixths. Now I do the diminished on the weak beat. And that's just kind of, without doing a canon, just kind of moving in dyads through that motion that just happened in the piece. Okay, so now what happens instantly is it shifts to do the exact same thing, but now in F major. So we started on the 4 in D minor, which is G minor 6. We moved to D minor 6, but emphasizing the diminished. Then we played D minor 6. And I just kind of did a sloppy example of doing that type of thing with dyads just on my own. So now, whoops, what is it? So this is B flat major 6. Strong beats are B flat major 6, and the weak beats are diminished. And now, same thing, I'm going to do this here. Diminished notes in F major 6. Sorry, no, this is the on notes in F major 6. This is F major 6, and then diminished notes on the strong beat. Diminished notes. Diminished notes. Now again, you have the same thing of borrowing on top. You see? It's the same concept as what we did before in D minor, but now with F. So it went B flat major 6. And now I'm treating it like this is F major, and then diminished. And then I'm going to resolve. There's an ambiguity between F major and D minor, but this is very F major-y here. Now, my favorite moment of the movement. It goes to F7. Now that could be expounded upon, you know, could have gone to B flat, but instead he does this. And then he does it in the bass, the E flat notes. But now, little surprise, F sharp, making it F sharp diminished. And F sharp diminished substitutes for F, because that's the dominant from which F is derived. By flattening an F sharp on F sharp diminished, I get F7. But if I flattened D sharp, I get D7, because they're in the same family, in that same tesseract that I've shown you before. Okay? So, and what he does is take this diminished and treat it like it's D7 now, or rather, the diminished in G minor. And we briefly move to G minor. So we go, here we are. This is diminished in G minor 6, so it's diminished on strong beat, weak beat, and then we're going to resolve to G minor. But the canon, if you remember, goes, the top voice goes like that, so the bottom voice has to go the same thing an octave down. But those are diminished notes, because I've been emphasizing the diminished notes. So when I do this in the bottom voice, but if I want a cadence there, if I want to hit G minor there, I just make these into like into a kind of borrowing. It's borrowing, and that's what he does. He goes that's what that is. That's just borrowing. You know, could have done any number of, things, but it's just borrowing, allowing that lower voice to impersonate the diminished notes, but making it sound like we cadence, and then we go, you know, and then like that, but we go. Now we're on G minor 6 on the strong beats, making it sound like the beginning of the song where we were on G minor 6 on the strong beats, and making way for going back to D minor where we're going to end the piece. going to emphasize the diminished notes of D minor 6. There it is. Borrowing on D minor. So that's a beautiful, right? D minor, and I'm done. And then I just do a little circle of imitation. You get the idea? So I go F, A, D, accompanied by a diminished note, like a borrowing. And then the top voice does that same thing, right? Which it did before, actually. So it's all about what we've been talking about with dyads in the little labyrinth. A lot of talk about that, right? So we go, right? At the beginning, now he goes to D minor 6, but emphasizing the diminished notes. I go up, right? I change it up. He did something different. He did... Of course, it's wonderful what he did, but it's a way of understanding the mind inside of the piece. For people who play repertoire like this, you get inside the mind of it. A conversation for another day is about artistic intention, but regardless of what Ponce thought, this is inside this piece. And you can compose out every single note from this piece thinking in this way, and it works really well. Again, because this system of substitution thinking, of thinking of the minor sixes and the scales of chords, the dominant 7 scale of chord, the major 6 scale of chord, the minor 6 scale of chord, and the dominant 7 flat 5. All of these things allow for movement without our hands having to just think too hard, because we have some sameness, even though the sound, the resulting sound, is full of variety. So yeah, you could just kind of recompose any part of this. So I hope you check out the annotated score. And I guess, I'll say real quick before closing on this. So with the canon, it adds another puzzle. Let's talk about that. It's a really interesting puzzle. So what if I want to make a canon in this way? I need to do a couple of things. I need to take note of whatever I do in this first voice, because I'm going to impersonate it down here. And then in the first voice, I'm going to do the rhythmic schematic of this, which means the melody goes quarter, 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 half note, quarter, 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 half note, quarter, 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 half note. So as I'm making my melody, one way of doing this improvisatorily would be, and it's challenging, but I go, I'm going to remember what I just did, do it down here, and I know that this is not a diminished note, it's the G minor 6, so I'm going to go. I could do, whoops, I could have done that for my melody, and that would have been a little bit more, maybe not as pretty, but it would be possible. But now my top voice has to do that, what I just did. So it's got to go, like that. So I had to remember that my top voice had just gone da dee da, and I made up some new stuff in my top voice, matching G minor 6 for G minor 6, and then now I would have to do whoops, just like I did. So something like that. I think I lost something there. It's a challenging thing, but it's fun to think about. I haven't gotten that good at that because that's a tough thing. Just doing dyads improvisatorily is enough of a fun challenge, and we can use that a lot in our improvisation. But that is the way that you would do a canon, is you would think backwards, and and into what you just did in the first voice, and then harmonize it using the correct diminished or non-diminished notes, unless you plan on doing a borrowing or something meaningful. So anyway, a little bit longer episode, and I hope you check out the PDF. And yes, again, please, if you feel like it, go check out the Patreon, and I'll link to it. And thank you so much for joining me for all of this. I hope that this episode has been maybe tied together a little bit about dyads and how this stuff is used in composition, or could be used to understand composition. And thank you so much, and I'll be following up with more. So keep practicing, and I'll talk to you soon.